Good morning, everyone. Let's look at the Parsha. Page 326, Exodus 25. And we have a interesting, let's just look. I want to go back to page 322, the last verse of the previous chapter, Exodus 24:18. Moses came into the mountain, Moses went up onto the mountain, onto Mount Sinai, and he was on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights. And then, chapter 25, and the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe lemor, Daber bnei Yisrael v'yikchu li teruma. Speak to the children of Israel, and they shall take an offering for me. There's a missing chapter in between chapter 24 and 25. You know what it is? Moses was on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights. And then what happened?
He came down.
That's right.
The golden calf.
The golden calf. And then, after that, comes this chapter. That's not how it's described in the Torah. In the Torah, Parshas Kisisa, which is the one that describes the children of Israel's fall with the sin of the golden calf, comes in a long time. Chapter 30, chapter 40, chapter 31.
So it's,
32, actually, chapter 32. So it is out of sequence in the Torah. That's not a problem. As we discussed in the past, the fact that the Torah, the teachings in the Torah, the chronology in the Torah is not necessarily in sequence, is an indicator that the Torah is not a narrative. It's a teaching. And so the Torah will not sacrifice the narrative. The narrative is irrelevant, meaning that the historical facts are only relevant insofar as they're a teaching. And that's why teaching comes before chronology. Ein mukdam u'meuchar b'Torah. And so the Torah is not primarily a historical work. It's an instructive work. Okay, but that being said, I think it's important to note the fact that this teaching, the teaching of the building of the tabernacle, the collection of gold and silver and copper, the offering for the children of Israel, is in order to build the tabernacle, is after the children of Israel's fall, after the sin of the golden calf. Why it comes before? Why does it come before? I don't know. Maybe we talk about that when we get to chapter 32. But the facts nonetheless is that this is a teaching for the fallen Jew.
This is a teaching
for the fallen Jew.
fallen.
For the fallen Jew.
What is it teaching? That
This passage, chapter 30, chapter 25, was the teaching that God told the children of Israel following their fall. So First of all, why? So I would like to look at this idea with that in mind. So, what shall you take from the children of Israel? Gold and silver and copper. Okay, so that is right away brings to mind the gold. The first thing that we're using in the building of the tabernacle is gold, and that brings to mind the other gold that was used in the golden calf.
Whatever happened to that gold?
It was ground up, pounded into dust, and poured into a river. Yeah. And then, drank from the river.
And when you say gold and silver and copper, also, I think of Yerushalayim.
Yerushalayim Shel Zahav, yeah. Yeah. So you have to remember which one came first, right? In that case, the poem came later.
Oh,
Yeah. So what is this gold? So there's something fascinating about it. It's the same gold that's used in the golden calf should be used in the building of the tabernacle. And this might answer a question about how it was possible for the children of Israel, after experiencing such a great high, the revelation at Sinai and the exodus from Egypt, to fall so drastically, so tragically. And perhaps the answer is that that it's actually very logical, after such a high, to have such a fall. And the reason is, well, after every spiritual, what does it mean when a person has a spiritual fall? So we could think about it as making a mistake, right? But if it was a mistake, it wouldn't be an issue, right? The reason we see a fall as a problem, there are two kinds of falls that people have. There are falls that they want to have, and there are falls that they didn't want to have. Meaning there are times when we let ourselves go, right? And as a result of letting ourselves go, we have a fall. And the time that we often let ourselves go can be after a great accomplishment or after a great revelation.
Well, there's nowhere else you can't go any further up, so you got to come down.
That's one way of saying it, yeah. Right, yeah. The fall, but basically, if you think about it, what is the accomplishment? The accomplishment is the completion of the fulfillment of a certain level. So as long as we're in the process of growing, we're working towards finishing that accomplishment, we're climbing still. So there's no, that doesn't involve the fall. The fall doesn't happen there. The fall happens when we finished. And the reason is because there's an emptiness that happens when we finish. There's a void. And what we're really meant to do when we feel like we're about to fall is build something new. We're supposed to start on the next stage of growth. If we don't, then we end up falling. And I'll say that the truth is that a fall to a certain degree is inevitable. In the sense that it doesn't mean, I don't mean sin. I mean the experience of void, the experience of lacking. the empty feeling that comes after an accomplishment. That empty feeling is inevitable. It's a part of the call to the next step.
And when I get to be elected president of the United States, the next day I'm going to have this empty feeling.
No.
Where can I go?
All right, start now planning to go for your wardrobe. You're not getting
Start planning the decorations of the Oval Office.
Redecorate,
Oh, yeah.
get busy.
Yeah.
There's
So,
a call. It is a call.
It's the call to start growing on the next step. And so we need to learn is to hear the feelings of emptiness as a call to growth.
And to find the next step.
Yeah.
It's
To
like,
find the
where
next
do you
step.
go from there, it's like,
So sometimes sometimes we catch ourselves before and we grow to the next step, but sometimes we don't. And the Torah is telling us something deep, which I don't fully understand.
It's like Moti Shabbos, the Malav Malach.
Yes.
Same thing.
Yes.
You feel
Emptiness.
Shabbos is
Yeah.
over now. Now what?
Right.
So we have to have a little Malav Malach.
it is a
Right.
letdown, yeah.
So the Torah tells us here something deep is that the very stuff that was your fall, that's the place. It's with that same stuff that you have to build.
It gives you a direction to go.
Right. Right. So the Jewish people sinned with gold. Make something godly out of gold. It's the same character trait that was failure was accomplishment. I'm remembering something. I was just thinking about this yesterday. I spoke to a Jewish communal leader. He was reflecting on different presidents, and he was saying how it's interesting that the most moral of presidents had the most unremarkable of presidencies, and the most immoral presidents had in some ways the most remarkable presidencies.
Who was the better one that had such a good presidency? Roosevelt? Teddy?
Let's say Kennedy.
He was the most
Yeah.
moral.
Immoral.
Oh,
An
immoral,
immoral
right.
president who had a
Which was the moral
remarkable,
one?
let's say
Yeah.
Carter.
Carter?
Carter, a highly moral person, married to the same woman forever, never, you know what I mean? But at the same,
scandal.
no scandal, not even a sniff of a scandal. But at the same time, okay, he was anti-Israel, but in terms of his accomplishments, not, no, this is not a bombastic presidency. But I'm saying even in terms of his policy accomplishments, I'm not an expert. This is before my time a little bit, but even as far as his policy accomplishments, not very bombastic, not very. So what's the relationship between or even somebody like Nixon, for example? Nixon, scandal from top to bottom, but at the same time, he accomplished some bombastic things. Well, there was one fatal scandal with Nixon, right?
What again?
And overall, just also the way he conducted himself politically.
There was no moral as far as doing.
No, it's not, there are many ways for a person to be morally questionable, right? So we brought two examples. I don't think intimate morality as far as intimacy is concerned is the only way to be immoral. So you hear the aside, you hear the theory behind it. So he explains what's the correlation between somebody who's morally questionable and being able to accomplish greatness. So he says, because this is a person who's a risk taker. And he's not concerned with staying in the box. He's not concerned with rules, and therefore he's willing to go outside of the norms. He's willing to do things that are not conventional. and therefore he's able to do those, and which meant that he, broke certain conventions in terms of morality and ethics. But those same breaking of that same quality of the breaking of conventions meant that he was willing to go and do bombastic things on a policy level. So
is this rabbi recommending this as a lesson for us?
So I'm recommending this,
Okay.
Oh,
and I'm saying that here's an example of a person. He asked me not to quote him on it because it sounds kind of. But I won't quote. I'm not quoting him on it. I'm not telling you who he was, who he is.
building it and giving it out as
So-
well.
Yeah. So there are the most negative qualities that a person can have that can themselves be the most positive qualities. This very same gold, the very same gold. I'm not saying about a president because I'm saying about me. I'm talking about myself. I'm talking about, hopefully, if the hat fits for you, then great. But the very same quality that is the same gold that was used in the golden calf is used in building the altar. Reb Nachman says something beautiful. He says, the most beautiful music is music that comes from sadness.
And poetry too.
Yeah. So
I'm not sure about that.
what?
Most beautiful music comes from sadness.
No?
A lot of joy in music.
Yeah. I find sad music much more beautiful than joyful music.
I love beautiful, upbeat music.
Okay.
It stirs
Yeah,
my
you might
soul.
like it, right? And so
No, but it makes me, but there's beauty and joy.
Okay, look, we're not making a universal statements about what beautiful music is, so I'll take out the word the most. Okay? What's amazing is the capacity to turn sadness into art. That's an amazing thing. And that's the idea, which is take that pain. Now, when a person listens to that music later on, they don't hear pain. People listen to music, art that's created out of pain. The sadness that person, it's okay. It could be sometimes be melancholy, but it's not the same melancholy that the person
Transforms it.
right. It's not the same melancholy that a person experienced before creating that music. It's uplifting. It's inspiring, even if it's different. It's different. So this is our work. Our work is to take our gold. So this is what means is we have to, we might have negative view of ourselves. Hopefully we have negative view of ourselves. Because why do I say hopefully we have a negative view of ourselves? Yeah, because look, honestly, why didn't say we should. I said hopefully we do. Why? Do you have a negative view of yourself? You think?
Sometimes.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
But it's not good.
Okay. It's not good. But I think intelligent people are critical of themselves.
Oh, you want to grow.
Okay. Fine.
That's
Fine.
exactly
I'm
so.
speaking about facts right now. I'm not speaking. First of all, the fact. I think it's a fact that intelligent people are highly critical of themselves. Reflective people who are self-reflective, are often. It takes work to be able to accept yourself. People don't naturally. There's two kinds. I'll give you an example. There are two kinds of self-acceptance. There are people who are blind to their faults, and they walk around with every time they look in the mirror, they put on rose-colored glasses. Right? That's not real acceptance. That's ignoring your flaws. And a person like that, naive, simplistic, immature, right? And then there is the kind of growth, the kind of acceptance that comes in knowing oneself intimately, knowing your struggles and flaws, and being able to, through that, find an acceptance of oneself. That's different, right? So of course we're all in this room, we're all very spiritually advanced, and we're not see that sigh? Oh, there, I found it spirit. There I see you're critical of yourself. It's true. A person who I say is spiritually advanced, they nod. Yeah. That's not a very spiritually advanced person, right? So yeah, but I'm sure that all of us being the kind of people who krechts when I say, oh, everyone here is spiritually advanced, means taka we're spiritually advanced. So that means that we're the type of people who have reached the degree of acceptance of self, right? Acceptance of our limitations, recognition. But the work is for people who look at ourselves and we say, I'm not such a great person. I'm a flawed individual. I have so much to work on. I have so much. Dig right there. That gold. That's your gold right there. Dig right there and find what actually right there is my gold mine. Right there is what I can accomplish. We look. It is the hallmark of a person with spiritual aptitude to be self-critical. Because as you said, growth involves identifying opportunities. We have to identify the opportunities for growth, but it can be a self-defeating process sometimes, because the growth has to come from the flaw itself. It's the instabilities, that we are static things. Static things don't grow. Things that are solid and stable don't grow. Growth happens in a context of instability and volatility. And so we have to recognize that our feelings of instability, insecurity, volatility, those kinds of uncertain places in our psyche, in our life, in our experiences, that's exactly the places where there's room for growth. Yeah? What do you think?
I think we also have to celebrate, like you said, a long time ago, the process, not necessarily getting there, but the fact that we're trying. We may not get to where we want to be, but that we're struggling with it. At least we're struggling with it. You said that a long time ago.
Yeah. I think there's another part about the Mishkan, which is the Mishkan is portable. And it says that this quality, this gold that becomes this tabernacle for God, is something that we carry with us on a journey. It's not, and I think it refers to the dynamic nature of growth, which is that it happens in the journey. But it's also in my life's journey, in my wanderings in the wilderness. I will looking for the promised land, all along that journey, that's where the Mishkan is built. Right? This is kind of what you were saying about the struggle, which is we think sometimes about reaching nirvana, reaching the top of the mountain, reaching the promised land, getting to Yerushalayim. But actually, the Mishkan the tabernacle is built on the journey. And every place that we camp on the journey, we can unpack the Mishkan.
I've heard the story that the Mishkan during the breakup of Israel, when the tribes separated and had a falling out, and the north and the south. I can't remember whether it was that time or after, when chaos occurred, that the Mishkan ended up in Africa. And it is located someplace
It is at the bus dock.
in the south of Africa. There's a group of people who are supposedly partly descendants of a tribe, perhaps, and are taking care of the Mishkan, or
Some implements from the tabernacle, or some implements from the tabernacle, or the walls itself.
I thought it was the whole tabernacle. I don't know.
Not the Ethiopians. No.
Maybe I don't know
There are a
where
lot
this
of
was.
stories
Ethiopians
about
are-
what
There are stories.
happened.
Maybe it's a lot of stories.
Yeah. Right, it's at the top of a
catacombs.
mountain. There's like a monastery or something that nobody can go on or something. I think I've heard of this. Yeah.
And how about the catacombs under Rome?
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of our stuff is
The
there.
utensils. Yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah, they're out.
It may be,
The
that
silver.
when they ask them and they say no, they're telling the truth as far as they know, because it's so long ago and it was so hidden that nobody really knows where it is. But I think underneath that there's a lot of our stuff.
Yeah, we had a rabbi here once as a scholar in residence who had traveled to the Vatican and had spoken to somebody who confirmed. Of course, look, there's stuff that we've seen, manuscripts and texts and books, and those from the more recent history, 1,000 years old or something like that. But yeah, he confirmed that the menorah is there.
My son used to sell tours of the Vatican.
Yeah.
In Italy. And then people were asking to take a look.
Yeah, but this is not 13 floors on the. He said something like 13 floors on the ground or something. Yeah. So this is the story that he told. Anyhow, the idea that we can build a tabernacle specifically while we're wandering, I find that a fascinating idea. Specifically while we're lost. Specifically while we don't know where the promised land is. It's in that place that we have the capacity to build the tabernacle for God. And I think there's in one sense, I think it relates to the idea that it's specifically in instability and in uncertainty that spiritual growth is possible. That's on a personal level. But I think also on a divine level, the experience of God is only possible in uncertainty, is not possible in revelation, meaning we think of God as being something that we experience in revelation. But remember that anything that we can experience, anything that we as human beings can comprehend, any revelation that we can absorb is necessarily a limited revelation, and is therefore not containing. God can't be contained in revelation. And so the closest we can ever get to God is in the sense of emptiness.
Also, can only be contained when we're struggling, ongoing. Well, when everything's going good, you forget about it, and then all of a sudden things go bad. You start, oh, hey, God, I need
Right.
help.
So that's right. So there's 2 points. One is the human experience. On the human experience level, we grow in instability. We grow in our vulnerable and unstable places.
Some people grow, some people don't.
Exactly.
Yeah. But the growth happens, I think, yes, and some people fail. Of course, the stakes are real. Let's not pretend that the stakes are not real. People die trying things. Okay? But accomplishments only happen when people try things. So trying things doesn't necessarily result in accomplishment. Trying things results in death sometimes. Right? And so people fail. People die because of their vulnerabilities. And of course, I mean die in the literal sense, but also in the broader sense. Right? Failure is crushing. Some people never recover from failure. No question about it. But at the same time, that space is the one that makes possible growth.
So you have to be realistic to know not to go so far as to destroy
I don't
yourself.
know, Ellie, I don't know.
People who ski in crazy places.
Okay.
Foolish daring.
Yeah.
I guess there's foolish daring and
I don't know. I think this last week there was this guy who'd made a steam-powered rocket.
oh yeah, he died.
He died. The rocket crashed. He went into steam power. He built a steam-powered rocket
For his own transport.
for his own thing. He wanted to, and it was attached to a parachute that was supposed to shoot up into the stratosphere, and the parachute disconnected, and that was it. So he died trying. But if he had accomplished it, it would have been a massive discovery. It would have been a great accomplishment, right? He died trying. And he had to be a little crazy. He had to be a little unsatisfied with his life. This is the point. A person who goes so extreme to try and create something so awesome, again, with all the stakes, despite all odds, must be supremely dissatisfied. Hunger is the biggest motivator. People who are happy are losers.
I know what you mean.
You know what I mean? People who are happy, because
But there's no crime in being happy.
okay, you can want to be
Be
great.
grateful.
Good, be happy.
Yeah.
You know what? Be
But
happy.
not always.
Go ahead, be happy.
See if I can.
Right? Saying is that ignorance is bliss.
Yeah, but these are
Bliss.
extremes. You're talking about extremes.
Of course, I'm talking about extremes because you can only I'll make my points in extremes and then you modify them to real life. Okay. So one point is that on a human experience level, we have to recognize that our growth happens in our vulnerability, and our dissatisfaction and our hunger is the motivator to try things, to take risks, and of course, stakes are real, risks are real. People die trying things. That's one point. The second point is that in the experience of God, we have to recognize that this experience of the divine is never one in which we'll be fully satisfied. we can have moments of, look, I'm not saying that there's no such thing as spiritual fulfillment, but I'm saying that there's something supremely godly and supremely true about the feeling of emptiness, the feeling of wandering, the feeling of yearning and seeking God. And that's why the tabernacle is built during the wandering of the desert. The gift of the wandering in the desert is the building of the tabernacle. That's another lesson about the Mishkan. And the last lesson about the Mishkan, I think, is the idea that it's packed up and unpacked. So I think that we have to be able to deconstruct and reconstruct our memories, our experiences, our spiritual toolbox.
What do you mean? Reconstruct and deconstruct?
Like, there are times when I think everyone has a crate, a trunk with a packed up Mishkan inside. And we have to, meaning we have a toolbox of things that work for us. And one of the most powerful questions that we can ask ourselves is, when I'm feeling down, is what works for me when I'm feeling down? Like, it seems like a very simple thing to do, but we don't do it. We get down and we start beating ourselves up or whatever particular was our particular drug of choice. And it just goes on. But if we think back to the last time I survived something painful, think to the last time that I overcame a trauma. Like, what worked for me? What worked for me? And that's the Mishkan in the trunk. So you packed it up. You carried on wandering. Whoops. Now you find yourself lost again. You camped. You feel empty. Unpack the Mishkan again. It's time to break out the Mishkan. Right? So what worked yesterday might work again.
And sometimes it's just time. Just the passage of time.
Well, that's a tool.
Yeah.
But that's a tool.
Yeah.
Knowing that things will pass. That's one of the tools in the box. This too shall pass.
Speaking about time, I think there are two ways of going through time. You got me started now. Speaking of, there are two ways of thinking about how time heals all wounds. Sometimes time is just paint over the mold. And so really we have this unresolved problem that just kind of, we're still, sometimes we think, but really we're just still carrying that baggage around.
It loses its, some of its
But it loses its vitality, but we can, right, so we learn to function, it becomes part of the new normal, but
simmers.
it's still there. It's still a part of our baggage. And it comes out, it can chayzer v'nir, it can kind of reawaken sometimes, yeah. Other times, that another version of time is where we process through it and we have objectivity to be able to deconstruct it and to kind of take it apart, analyze it properly, right? I think it's a different. So I think they're both potentially possible. It's possible to be carrying baggage that feels like okay because it's just a new normal.
Or you see it differently because you grow a little bit.
Right. So sometimes what I'm saying is sometimes we just kind of we think we forgot about it, but we're not really seeing it differently.
And sometimes you talk to someone else who has a similar experience and they show you how they view it.
Right.
You look at it. Oh, okay.
Yes, that can be very helpful. Right. So distance can be helpful, but it's still there. I think there's still something proactive required. Or else, otherwise, it's just painting over the mold.
Yeah, you always said that, and I remember you said if you don't deal with it one way or another, it's going to come out.
So it's not good to hold a grudge. You have to let other people know what you think, otherwise it comes out strong another time later.
Right.
Piled on other stuff.
Right.
And that's not fair to the other person.
We're just dealing with stuff we have to deal with quick. If you keep it in, it does come out in the wrong way sometimes.
It explodes sometimes inappropriately.
Yeah.
Right. So under pressure, right, it comes out again. Yeah. What else?
So the Mishkan is representative of the toolbox? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think it's like, it's representative of the toolbox. It's represented on, remember the last time that you had a tabernacle. Recognize that you still have that packed up and that you can unpack it again.
I think they also said the Mishkan is a microcosm of the universe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. So what?
So the idea that the Mishkan is a microcosm of the universe, I think again that the Mishkan is the idea that each of us has our own Mishkan, and that no two people have the same Torah. Why is it important that the Mishkan be a universe? Because my Mishkan is there's a whole universe. Like we have the story of the world, but really each of us, our own tabernacle, our own dwelling, like everyone reads world history differently. Every person, all of us apply, right? No two life experiences, no two life journeys are the same. And therefore, even if we all hear the same objective facts and the same objective truths, we have to apply them to our own life experiences. And that therefore becomes a unique story. And so every reading of the Torah is unique. Nobody on earth knows what you know. And so therefore, the Mishkan is the microcosm of the universe, meaning the whole story of the world is all brought down to a Mishkan. And everyone builds it in their own place, in their own time, in their own journey.
Maybe everybody adds to that universal Mishkan.
Yeah, but we all see, yes, it's true. So that the only one who knows that is God. Because each of us, even if you say that everyone adds to this kind of vast tabernacle or the body of teaching that is Torah. So let's say we all contribute to this teaching, but then again, each of us goes ahead and reads that very same teaching from our own perspective. So what ends up happening is that no matter the objective reality that the Torah is that the tabernacle is a product of the entire Jewish people collaborating together, or the world collaborating together, but again, each of us only approaches that from our own individual and subjective point of view. And that means, and I think this is, I think there's a reason why I'm arguing this point, which is that there's two, we can look at Torah as a book on the shelf, in which case something like the objective fact that the whole world is collaborating on it is interesting. Or we can look at Torah as being an instruction for me, in which case the only thing that matters is the fact that I take it to heart and what it's going to do for in my life, how I'm going to, right? There's like, Torah is not meant to be an arm's length study. It's not meant to be an analysis of it. It's meant to be a challenge to me.
But I remember Manus Friedman once said that every spiritual growth that we make is helping to keep the world going. So it's not just about us.
Yes, but yes. So the point is that we have to hear that as a call. Like that's a very, like, there's. This is like why I don't like gematrias. You know what gematrias are? Like the numerical analysis of biblical words or whatever, right? The reason I don't like it is because it's scientific. It's analytical. It relegates the Torah to an arm's length study, to an equation. And maybe it's just because I don't have the ability to personalize an equation, to see beauty, to see struggle, to see personal growth in an equation, right? You could have a gematria, but there has to be a point at the end that says, and therefore that's what this means to me. It's like, oh, cool! Look at this trick. Look what I can do. Look, ma, no hands. You know, look at this trick that I can do with Hebrew words. To me, that's like turning the Torah. It's another version of turning the Torah into history.
But that might appeal to some people.
Yeah, I think that's
Some
like,
people like that.
I know, and that I know that people like that. So what does it do? What does that do?
They like more of that scientific way of looking at things.
So what kind of Jew does that create?
Well, it gets people interested. It brings them in, and then they could learn more other things.
I think for some people it's proof
Yeah, that's
of Hashem,
right. They like that.
you know, because it's nothing that a human could have done, and the fact that these gematrias they add up, or they this or that, just like the codes of the Torah, which
Yeah,
was very
that's what I'm
popular years ago.
Yeah,
I think for many people that was the proof of the
Entrance.
existence of Hashem.
it was the entrance into.
And you know what? Whatever proves it in your mind and everything is probably good. There are different ways of
I
looking
think
at
it's
things.
like a Rorschach test, although it seems scientific. I think the person playing gematria is actually using that to draw out something inner. Like tarot cards or something.
Mm-hmm.
There are images there. What do they mean? Well, you have to interpret them. Or What do you see in the numerical? Which words have you looked on to try to find numerical correspondences? It's a creative thing rather than a scientific thing.
Hmm.
It seems scientific maybe, but
You're saying ultimately there's a human process involved. There's a inquest involved in that, and that
yes,
says something about
it's
the person.
way, right? It's the way you get to the Torah.
Mhm.
Or one of the ways.
It's a bridge. Over.
Yeah.
Same thing with Kabbalah. I remember the Kabbalah Center used to get a lot of people. They didn't do many halachas, but they loved the Kabbalah. And then later on, those serious ones started to learn halachas and more the foundation of Judaism. But that's how they came in. To, all these other people.
Yeah.
They set a center and keep going. Center. Many Jews come in many ways.
Yeah. No, it's
People
look, it's
come
the
in.
journey. The journey is the journey. Absolutely. I think that
It's the 12 tribes, 12 different ways.
People are made differently, you know.
Yeah, some people come through art, music, dance,
Yeah.
and that's what appeals to them.
yeah. Look, of course, the journey is the process is a process, and we shouldn't invalidate the process. From my perspective, though, I have much more value in the personalization of Torah rather than right. I think that's the end goal in a way. At least that's what it's. At least at this stage in my life, that's what it seems like is the end goal, or that's where the rubber meets the road. Is in that ability to move beyond the objective fascination with the intricacy of Torah to the study of self. I'll just to conclude with this story with the
you're
person.
More fearless, maybe. People who are more fearless are willing to, like you say, look into yourself. Some people don't want to. So
Yeah.
they'll stay with
Okay.
the more intellectual, the music and the numbers of the matches, because it's outside them more.
Right.
Like you said,
Right.
it's people who
So we have to. I think we have to encourage. So that's the story goes. The person who said I went to one yeshiva where they thought about God all day, and then I graduated from there, and I began to think about myself all day. And that's more advanced. It's great to think about God, but
not to think so much of yourself, right?
not to think
A little
of myself,
Oh, okay.
but to think about myself,
Okay.
right? Which could mean pondering the nature of my own existence, wondering, do I really exist? That's one interpretation. Another interpretation is analyzing what I'm doing, questioning myself, right? That's we could spend a whole life asking, why does God do what he does? Okay, that's great. Much better is to ask, why did I do what I did?
There's a chance there. Of coming up with some answers.
Yeah, you're more likely to come up with some answers, but you're also more likely to I think that sums it up. You're more likely to come up with some answers. You're more likely to accomplish. You're more likely to grow. It's more worthwhile, and you're better off questioning that. Yeah. All right. I go to Vach.
Thank you.